I have a few friends who love to play the lottery, like it's their job. And a part of playing the lottery is complaining about it. And one of their complaints is it's rigged. Now, my argument is probably not, because anyone can do a statistic. I mean, if you know statistics, you can do a statistical analysis and find out whether the numbers are random or not. Anybody, any mathematician can do it. So if it's rigged, it'd be really easy to see, really easy to call it out, and the lottery's not going to do that. At the very least, they're going to make it harder to look like it's rigged, and that's going to be really hard to do. So the reason why I raise this point is because Jimmy Dore, I'm going to play a clip here in just a second, raises the claim that YouTube uses different algorithms for different users and content providers, and I want to ask a question about that. Is that true? So I'm going to go into depth about it, but first let's listen to Jimmy Dore. Now, if you don't know who Jimmy Dore is, brace yourself. He's a grown man, an adult. He's been paying attention to the world, so of course he's angry. He's going to use some colorful language. Brace yourself. Here's Jimmy Dore.
And by the way, they're on the good algorithm. The Hill's on the algorithm where they don't unsubscribe people. Me and Kyle Kalinske are on the shitty algorithm. We don't have MSNBC contracts. We're on the shitty algorithm where they unsubscribe people, so that's why our fucking subscriber growth is almost zero. We got up to 800,000 subscribers, and now they're fucking killing us. And it's because they have different algorithms. There's an algorithm for the shows that they unsubscribe people from, and then there's the shows where they don't. I'm on the ones where they do, and definitely the Hill's on the one where they don't unsubscribe them because they're a big corporation.
You know, it's funny, at the Gray Zone, our videos do pretty well, but I haven't seen the subscribers rise in relation to how many views we get. Like, some reviews get tens of thousands, even a few 100,000 views, but I've noticed too that our subscribers don't rise in line with how many people are watching us. That's right. It's curious.
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm getting 9-10 million views every month, and my subscriber count is just crawls up. And before, when I had almost no subscribers when I started this channel in 2016, we were adding 1,000, 2,000. We were over 30,000 a month. We were adding subscribers out of our ass because it was an election year. Right, and it's another election year, so you'd think it would be through the roof. Our videos get lots of views. Like I said, we're getting 9-10 million views a month. Our subscriber base is just creeping up. And other shows who no one watches, if and you know the shows I'm talking about, Aaron, no one watches these shows. They drop videos. Their videos get 4,000 views. No one watches these shows. They've blown right past people like Kyle and me, and no one watches their shows. I'm talking about a subscriber base, and. Yeah. That obviously there's different algorithms. There's the corporate algorithm, and then there's the actual independent journalist algorithm. You're on that. I'm on that. Kyle Kalinski's on that. But no doubt there's lots of YouTubers who aren't on that.
So Jimmy's talking about signals going into the algorithm. One of those signals is who's viewing, how long they're viewing, where they're coming from. You get all that, right? Well, there's a guy from 3 Blue 1 Brown who kind of breaks it down a little bit more. So let's listen to what he has to say.
Now is the point I suppose I should say subscribe to stay notified about when that video or any new videos come out. But realistically, most of you don't actually receive notifications from YouTube, do you? Maybe more honestly, I should say subscribe so that the neural networks that underlie YouTube's recommendation algorithm are primed to believe that you want to see content from this channel get recommended to you.
So what is he saying? He said a lot of words. He said algorithm, and Jimmy said algorithm, and let's look at what an algorithm is. I'm not going to get into this too far, but I am going to kind of shed a little bit of light, crack it open a little bit so we can see what's inside. So an algorithm is basically just an equation, a kind of a special equation that performs some kind of action. This one has the function of counting. So it's kind of a function, what is a function, and it counts. If you go through it again, if x is 0 and you add 1, it's going to be 1. You plug this back in again, and it gets to be 2, and then it gets to be 3, and so on and so forth. You see how that works? A very simple equation does something very powerful like counting. Well, if you put all of these bunches of equations together, all these functions together, you get something that's really scary looking, like this here. This is called a neural network, a deep neural network, and this is machine learning. We'll look at it a little bit more closely here. So on the left hand side, you can imagine that that's your input signals. That's, if you're on YouTube, that's your viewing history. That's how long you've watched, whether you've commented or liked. How does this compare to what you've watched in the past, in order to figure out what we can get you to watch in the future. So you put all of those input signals in, and that's the output response that you want. You want something to happen. You want the person to stay engaged, or you want them to be happy. You want them to spend money. Whatever it is that you want them to do, that's what your output response is. So you have those two things together, and then you just run this over and over again. Zillions of generations. Eventually you're going to find the formulas, the functions are all going to line up in a certain way where there is a good likelihood that, given these input signals, if I do this, I'm going to get the desired output response. These little circles and lines are called weights and biases, and those can be adjusted. They can be manipulated in ways in order to achieve the desired results. And you can make that, you can increase the fidelity of that by improving the signals, by adding signals, making sure that those signals represent more closely the information that they're supposed to. The hidden weights, that's all these weights and biases and stuff inside here. No one really knows what those are. No human being can really pull those apart. There could be hundreds of thousands of these, all working together to produce this exquisitely brilliant output response. So I wanted to get into it a little bit further about why Jimmy is kind of right, but may not be. And the investigation that was done, the statistical analysis, may not even represent that too, because we're literally talking about hundreds of thousands of signals. So in order to do an in-depth statistical analysis, you have to be able to parse out all of those signals so that you can give them their proper weight and biases. So you're like reverse engineering all of this neural network. And when you're talking about the hundreds of thousands of things, it's really complicated. So one of the first things that Jimmy talked about was having two different algorithms, or three or four, or however many there are. There's actually one basic sort of algorithm, like your cell, like the basic cell, and then you train that. So users, when you use YouTube, you're signed in, even if you're not signed in. But if you're signed in, it keeps track of you. It knows what you're watching. It knows your history. It knows when you engage in YouTube, on what days, and if you're on the platform for years, it has a really good idea of who you are. And it does a really good job of keeping you engaged in it. So by that, everyone has their own algorithm, essentially. Everyone has their own trained algorithm. So there are millions and millions of algorithms on YouTube in terms of the users. And then those millions of different users' algorithms, the signals that come from those, that may go into another algorithm or group or series of algorithms that try to figure out certain objectives, certain goals. So here are your signals. That's just a few. Like I said, there could be thousands and thousands. And on YouTube, there are thousands of signals that they use, data points. They use millions of data points to come up with all of these signals so that they can induce some kind of response. And it's optimized for what? This is what Jimmy is really talking about here. I think this is what he is trying to scratch the surface of. How is it optimized for users? Is it optimized for user satisfaction or engagement? Is it optimized for manipulation? It absolutely is optimized for manipulation, but it's manipulating people for a particular reason. satisfaction or engagement or spending money or changing your opinion, whatever it is. It could be optimized for a return on investment for people who are spending ad money on YouTube. It could be optimized for a state voice or a corporate voice. So that's what Jimmy is trying to touch on when he says that there are different algorithms. And his fears and mine, and they're quite legitimate, is since we don't have a good view of the algorithm, how it's built, what its weights and biases are, what are its input signals, how is the output response, how is that, who comes up with that, and what's the motivations. Because we don't know these things, we really put ourselves at risk, because these algorithms are intensely powerful when it comes to manipulating people and putting us in echo chambers. Let's go back to this picture here. I'm going to flip back through. Bill, Pat, and Jim. You can get some weird signals from just these three people. They could watch all kinds of different things, and maybe on occasion they just watch cats. Now, if we look at cat videos, we'll see, someone or a lot of people really like cat videos. So if you're not looking at the signals right, it could turn into one of those things where YouTube just turns into the cat channel. Does that sound familiar at all? Do people get that? And maybe Bill, Pat, and Jim share the same viewpoints. So YouTube is going to look at each of those. It's going to see what everyone's looking at. It's going to try to find their pattern, and then it's going to match everyone up. Everyone gets kind of funneled or nudged into the same sort of fingerprint through this very clever manipulation, so that at the end of it, everyone's pretty much looking at and following the same thing. So you lose the variety. There's this intellectual diversity drops whenever YouTube is recommending everything for you and you're not actively looking for stuff yourself. So one of the ways that you can train the algorithm better is to actively look for things, not take the suggestions and the recommendations from YouTube, because that paints everyone into sort of the same corner. And there's a lot of that goes on, and then that can skew how statistically things look when you lay them down. So that's how corporations can kind of stand out a little bit more than other people. And then there's the dynamic of how people watch the platform. For corporate news media, the reason why they might have a lot of subscribers and no viewers, there could be lots of explanations for that. One that comes to mind real quickly is that corporate media has external sources that people can engage. So while they may be subscribed to the YouTube version, they're mostly engaging the external version. And then on occasion they go and look at the stories they've missed. That can throw that signal off. It can make the viewership look low for a channel that has lots of subscribers. And you may not even go to YouTube and look at their videos very often, but you'll subscribe because there may be an occasion where you miss the external source and you want to have that option. Or you want to get a notification to look into a story from an external source. So there's lots of this feedback. But basically it boils down to where you started, what that ecosystem looks like. So Jimmy Dore started on it's basically all internet. On YouTube is basically where he's originating. And then he's extending outward from there. His reach is going outward from YouTube to external sources. So there's the coverage is a little bit different. As a gradient, it just kind of lightens as it goes outward. But for corporations, they have this external source that people are engaging, so it lightens up as it goes inward. So while they might have lots of subscribers, they're not going to have lots of viewers. Does that make any sense? So that can kind of throw things off a lot too. And as far as the suggested goes, this could be another example of how the externality of corporate media influences the signals given to the algorithms in a way that people who don't have that externality, they're not getting that back. So if we look at how things are divided, how the algorithm splits people into corporations and not corporations, then we simply ask the question, well, how many of those non-corporations have a lot of external presence? When you factor that into it, that disparity starts to make a little bit more sense. So whether or not there are definitively two different algorithms, YouTube denies that there is, but we'll just have to take their word for it, won't we? We'll never be able to really figure it out statistically. I mean, we can maybe come close to things here and there, but just those few things that I mentioned illustrate why it can be really hard to make that assertion. It seems like it is, but there are other factors that are influencing that. So it may not be the algorithm. I hate to tell Jimmy this. It may not be the algorithm. It just may be the signals that are going into it, and the clear difference between corporate media and all things aren't given. All things given are not equal in the case of corporate media and other content providers. So we really can't expect the output response to be the same because the signals aren't the same. So that's pretty much it for this video. I love Jimmy Dore, I really do, but in all fairness, I just had to kind of take him to task on that for a little bit because people are confused, first of all, what an algorithm is, secondly, what machine language is, thirdly, what deep learning is, fourthly, what weights and bias. I mean, there's so much about it that people don't understand that goes into what we experience with an algorithm. And I kind of wanted to clear that up. So in the description there are links to 3 Blue 1 Brown, and he breaks it down. He does. You're not going to understand all of it probably because it's pretty heavy in math, but you will take away a lot of really good information, and it's going to clear up some things and maybe ask some questions that you hadn't asked. So I would encourage you to check that out. And thanks for watching, and until next time, you guys, take care.